Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be carrying on the series of What If? What if another Primarch returned instead of Roboute Guilliman? We've done Leman Russ, we've done the Lion, we've done Sanguinius, and now it's time for the good old boy who gives the best hugs in the galaxy. That is, of course, Mr. Vulkan. No matter where you stand, if you're a heretic, if you're a Xenos, if you are a loyalist, I absolutely think that everyone adores Vulkan. Vulkan is one of the most liked Primarchs, if not the most liked Primarchs. I know you've got the power levels of Sanguinius, Leman Russ, Conrad Kurz, Angron and stuff like that, but everyone looks at Vulkan and goes, that guy is really, really awesome. So let's jump in and let's discuss what if Vulkan returned instead of Roboute Guilliman. Now, technically, you can argue that Vulkan has already returned, and you could maybe look at his points that way. For those of you who have read the Beast Arises series, you'll know what I mean, but I want to discuss what if Vulkan returned in the current setting. When he returned last time, it was only like a couple thousand years after the heresy. This now is like full on 10,000 years. The Imperial religion is in full swing. The Inquisition is in full swing. The Great Rift is across the galaxy. Chaos, Abaddon, everything that's going on at the moment. So if Vulkan returned now, it would be a different situation, whereas he returned when he showed up in the Beast Arises series. Now, for me, Vulkan has an advantage over all other Primarchs, and I think he would be a good return over Guilliman in one certain way, and that is Vulkan cares for humanity. He and humanity are hand in hand with each other, whereas you'll find maybe other Primarchs willing to sacrifice a population to, for the greater good, kill 1 million to save 1 billion. Vulkan wouldn't have that stand. Again, that could probably rise up in some tricky situations, because maybe he would let that 1 million live, and then that 1 million would maybe, I don't know, spread a plague somewhere, but, it could have consequences. But on the whole outset of his character, I think people would view him more as a savior of the Imperium, because he comes in and he saves them. He doesn't sacrifice them for the greater good of whatever's going on at the time. I think when it comes to the politics side, of course, I think we would see a different character when it comes to Vulkan. I think every Primarch would off the High Lords. Not off them like, hang them off a balcony by their necks, but make sure they get rid of the bad seeds. Make sure they get rid of the ones that are just in it for the self-interest. And I don't see Vulkan straying away from that. He definitely won't leave the High Lords to do what they're doing, because most of the battle of the Imperium is within itself, and it's the High Lords who are causing that, because each one of them is stabbing each other in the backs for a play of power. Of course, Vulkan will come in, he would see that, would say, right, you, and you, get out of here. And, if there's any arguments or anything like that, I can, of course, see him using force to get rid of them, whether that is by his own hand or his son's hand. Maybe the salamanders and stuff like that will come in and be like his personal guard, or, whatever. I'm sure the Custodes would, I wouldn't say bow to him, but, would follow his leadership, because just like Guilliman had an audience with the Emperor, Vulkan himself would also have that audience with the Emperor, and the Custodes would be on his side. So he would definitely have the inner support of Terra and the inner military of Terra, aka the Custodians and all the people that fall under their jurisdiction and stuff like that. Of course, with all the Primarchs, each one is built to do a different thing. Whereas Guilliman would come back and he would be the master of, sorting things out, as we've already seen, Vulkan would fail in that regards. I think the impossible task for Vulkan would be trying to coordinate everything, whereas we've seen Guilliman come back and he's just like, all right, this is here, this is here, this is here. I wouldn't say Vulkan would be an ultimate failure, right? I think he would try his best, but whereas Guilliman would succeed in a lot of areas, Vulkan would actually fail. So that's why I think his power is more or less based in inspiring those under his command. Whereas Guilliman has shone from the Imperial religion, let's say, the sisters, the church itself, I think Vulkan would embrace it, not in a way embrace it where he thinks the Emperor is a god, but embrace it where he would become the beacon of that society. Whereas the church at the moment is trying to make Guilliman the beacon, the savior, so like basically, the son of a god and stuff like that. I think Vulkan would accept that role for the means of the good of the Imperium, to inspire the people, to give them faith, to give them hope in the time of much needed darkness, which is happening at the moment. The advantages of Vulkan are actually quite a lot. So first things first, he is a master at making weapons that do terrible, terrible things. Again, his conscience will come into play, but I can see him maybe going back to his forge and creating some things to combat chaos. Maybe something that is absolutely deadly against, you know, plagues and, you know, all the kind of chaos powers. I'm not saying he's going to defeat chaos in his forge all by himself, but I can definitely see him, you know, going back and start smacking things with his hammer and start building things. Maybe doing upgrades for the Marines, the actual Imperial Guard, maybe other aspects of the, you know, Imperial Society and all that kind of stuff. And let's not forget, when it comes to Vulkan himself, he's probably one of the most powerful Primarchs, if not the most powerful Primarch. I'm not going about his battle skill or anything like that. I'm on about that Vulkan can't die. Vulkan will forever live. So when you kill Vulkan, as we've seen someone do plenty of times during the Horus Heresy, he constantly came back. The guy can't die. For me, that is probably the most powerful traits you can have, because you can really throw yourselves at certain situations where the odds are basically unwinnable, and you come out with it as a winner because you come out with your life. So you can go in, cause a lot of death, cause a lot of havoc, destroy a lot of things, maybe take on your traitorous brothers like, you know, Magnus and Mortarion, whip their ass, then get killed in the process, but still you're reborn as Vulkan again, you come back again, and you get to live another day, while the other people around you, basically, well, your enemies who are around you, died, and they don't get to come back. And going back to the point of fighting his brothers, so Guilliman has fought 2 traitor brothers so far. He's fought Mortarion, and he's fought Magnus. Now, if Vulkan was to go against these chaps, I would kind of see the same result as what happened with Roboute. Roboute's been victorious, but through victorious by help from the people around him. Like, it's not just one-on-one. Of course, one-on-one would be a different situation, but in these times of war and everything that's going on, it's not just 2 Primarchs themselves throwing down and everyone's just watching. You know, there's a big battle going on around them and everything like that. And, you know, if you've read the books and stuff, it was with the aid of the, you know, the Sisters of Silence that Guilliman was able to, you know, defeat Magnus and, you know, cast him from Luna and stuff like that. So I kind of see the same situation happening with Vulkan, where I know Vulkan is really, really strong. Well, he's the most strongest of his brothers, if for those of you who follow the lore. And of course, I'm not putting that past him. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm just saying that when it comes to dealing with traitor Primarchs, you just don't need your strength. You need other things around you, because these things are attached to the warp now. So you need things which will banish that power. So, you know, if he did go to war, I would suggest and expect him to take the full arsenal of weapons. And I don't just mean like guns and stuff. I mean people following him into the battle as well. And this goes for the Primaris as well. So if Vulkan was to come back and Belisarius Cawl approached him and said, hey, this is what Roboute was, you know, had planned, and these are the Primaris Marines, I want you to use them, you know, use them as you mean, I think Vulkan would take to it. As we discussed in the Lion video with the Lion, not really taking to him at the start anyway, because of course the Lion, he's very untrusting, goes along with the Dark Angels as well. I don't see Vulkan having that approach. I think he would have saw the wisdom in what Guilliman was going to be doing. Guilliman and Vulkan were very, very close in the lore, like Guilliman and Dawn, and, you know, everyone was really close to Guilliman, who was still a loyalist, because they looked at him as the person who tried to save the Imperium with the Codex Astartes and, you know, stop all this madness from ever happening again. So I definitely think Vulkan would take to it and say, okay, yeah, give them to me, I will use them, and we will push chaos back. With all this theorizing about returning Primarchs and stuff like that, instead of Guilliman, I actually do rate Vulkan to be in the top 3. My top 3, of course, would be Rogal Dawn, Leman Russ, or Vulkan. Just because the connection they have to the Imperium, I personally think trumps everyone else. Like, they're not in it for themselves, they're in it for the greater means, the great success of the Imperium, to make sure the Imperium goes on and lives on in their father's name, and they would do anything in their arsenal to keep that going and purge any enemies that was to basically get in the way and trying to ruin that Imperial creed. Alright, Chaperonios, that is me done for another glorious video. Carrying on the series of What If. I don't think we've got a lot left now. I think we've only got Jagged I Can't left to discuss. And that is it for another Primarch series. I've lost track on how many Primarch series I've done, but everyone is more enjoyable than the last. So tell me what you think. How would Vulkan react to the current Imperium in your opinion? Do you think he would hate it? He would love it? Would he go in full-on raid Vulkan mode, start purging, destroying everything? I can't see it. The guy is just too good. He's just too nice. We don't deserve Vulkan. He's just such a nice boy, and he gives the best hugs, and he is strong as the Emperor himself. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all very, very soon. See you now, and bye-bye.